Tai Bo Chapter 8 1. 子曰：泰伯，其可谓至德也已矣。三以天下让，民无德而称焉。Confucius, speaking of a remote founder of the imperial house of Chu, the then ruling dynasty, remarked, "He was a man, it may be said, of the highest moral greatness. He 3 times refused the government of the empire, although the world, not knowing this, does not speak much of him." Footnote 38 BC 1122 to 225 2. 子曰：恭而无礼则劳，慎而无礼则习，勇而无礼则乱，直而无礼则绞。君子笃于亲，则民兴于仁；故旧不移，则民不偷。Confucius remarked, "Earnestness without judgment becomes pedantry. Caution without judgment becomes timidity. Courage without judgment leads to crime. Uprightness without judgment makes men tyrannical." When the gentlemen of a country are attached to the members of their own family, the people will improve in their moral character. When the gentlemen do not discard their old connections, the people will not become grasping in their character. Footnote 39. That is why the Scotch, who despise a tinless loom, are a peculiarly moral people. 3. 曾子有疾，召门弟子曰：其于足，其于手。是云战战兢兢，如临深渊，如履薄冰，而进而后，无之免服。小子。When the disciple of Confucius was on his deathbed, he called to him his own disciples and said to them, "Uncover my feet, uncover my hands." The song says, "Walk with fear and with trembling, as on the brink of a gulf, for the ground you are treading is with thin ice covered above. But now, my young friends, I shall from henceforth be free from all these things." 4. 曾子有疾，孟敬子问之。曾子言曰：鸟之将死，其鸣也哀；人之将死，其言也善。君子所贵乎道者三：动容貌，思远暴慢矣；正颜色，思尽信矣；出辞器，思远彼备矣。边斗之事，则有思存。On the same occasion as mentioned above, when a young noble of the court came to see him, the disciple said to him, "When the bird is dying, his song is sad. When a man is dying, his words are true." Now a gentleman in his education should consider 3 things as essential. In his manners, he aspires to be free from excitement and familiarity. In the expression of his countenance, he seeks to inspire confidence. In the choice of his language, he aims at freedom from vulgarity and unreasonableness. As to the knowledge of the technical details of the arts and sciences, he leaves that to professional men. 5. 曾子曰：以能问于不能，以多问于寡。有若无，实若虚，犯而不教，昔者无有常从事于斯矣。A disciple of Confucius remarked, gifted himself, yet seeking to learn from the ungifted, possessing much information himself, yet seeking it from others possessing less, rich himself in the treasures of his mind, yet appearing as though he were poor, profound himself, yet appearing as though he were superficial. I once had a friend who thus spent his life. 6. 曾子曰：可以托6尺之孤，可以寄百里之命，临大节而不可夺也。君子人与？君子人也。A disciple of Confucius remarked, "A man who could be depended upon when the life of an orphan prince, his master's child, is entrusted to his care, or the safety of a kingdom is confided to his charge, who will not, in any great emergency of life and death, betray his trust. Such a man I would call a gentleman. Such a man I would call a perfect gentleman." 7. 曾子曰：事不可以不弘毅，任重而道远。人以为己任，不亦重乎？死而后已，不亦远乎？ A disciple of Confucius remarked, "An educated gentleman may not be without strength and resoluteness of character. His responsibility in life is a heavy one, and the way is long." He is responsible to himself for living a moral life. Is that not a heavy responsibility? He must continue in it until he dies. Is the way then not a long one? 子曰：兴于诗，立于礼，成于乐。Confucius remarked, in education sentiment is called out by the study of poetry. See footnote 40. Judgment is formed by the study of the arts, and education of the character is completed by the study of music. Footnote 40. Wordsworth says of poetry that it tends to nourish the imagination in her growth, and give the mind that apprehensive power, whereby she is made quick to recognize the moral properties and scope of things. 9. 子曰：民可使由之，不可使知之。Confucius remarked, the common people should be educated in what they ought to do, not to ask why they should do it. Footnote 41. A Chinese commentator, Chen, of the Song dynasty, says here, Confucius said this not because he did not wish the people to understand, but because it is impossible to make them understand. But if you say Confucius did not wish the people to understand, that would mean that he would govern the people by jugglery or Jesuitism, as is sometimes done by later generations, a supposition which is preposterous. Goethe, in his latter years, was inclined to believe that Martin Luther put back the civilization of Europe because he appealed to the multitude to judge of things which they could not possibly be in a position to understand. The real and true principle of modern democracy, on the other hand, is contained in that saying of Confucius: greatly fear the aspirations, the inarticulate, not the mere articulate aspirations of the people. 大为明智。10. 子曰：豪勇极贫，乱也；仁而不仁，急之以慎，乱也。Confucius remarked, a man of courage who hates to be poor will be sure to commit a crime. A man without moral character, if too much hated, will also be sure to commit a crime. 11. 子曰：如有周公之才之美，使教且吝，其余不足观也矣。Confucius remarked, a man may have abilities as admirable as our Lord of Chu, but if he is proud and mean, you need not consider the other qualities of his mind. Footnote 42. Moses or Solon of Chinese history. See note chapter 7, section 5. 12. 子曰：3年学，不至于古，不亦得也。Confucius remarked, a man who educates himself for 3 years without improvement is seldom to be found. 13. 子曰：笃信好学，守死善道，威邦不入，乱邦不居。天下有道则见，无道则隐。邦有道，贫且贱焉，耻也；邦无道，富且贵焉，耻也。Confucius remarked, a man who is scrupulously truthful, cultured and steadfast to the death in the path of honesty, such a man should not serve in a country where the government is in a state of revolution, nor live in a country where the government is in an actual state of anarchy. When there is justice and order in the government of the world, he should be known, but he should be obscure. When there is justice and order in the government of his own country, he should be ashamed to be poor and without honor. But when there is no justice in the government of his own country, he should be ashamed to rich and honored. Footnote 43. Like the late General Charles, Chinese, Gordon. 14. 子曰：不在其位，不谋其政。Confucius remarked, a man who is not in office in the government of a country should never give advice as to its policy. 15. 子曰：失治之始，官居之乱，洋洋乎！盈耳哉！ Confucius, speaking of the performance of a great musician of the time, remarked, the volume of sound at the commencement and the clash and commingling of harmony at the end of that ancient ballad he played were magnificent. How it seemed to fill the ears. 16. 子曰：狂而不直，动而不怨，空空而不信，无不知之矣。Confucius remarked, appearance of high spirit without integrity, of dullness without humility, or simplicity without honesty. Of such men I really do not know what to say. 17. 子曰：学如不及，犹恐失之。Confucius remarked, In education, study always as if you have not yet reached your goal and as though apprehensive of losing it. 18. 子曰：巍巍乎！舜禹之有天下也，而不与焉。Confucius remarked, How toweringly high and surpassingly great in moral grandeur was the way by which the ancient emperors shone and you came to the government of the empire, and yet they themselves were unconscious of it. Footnote 44. The Isaac and Jacob of Chinese history. Two men in early patriarchic times in China who rose from the plowshare to the throne. BC 2255–2205 and BC 2205–2179. 19. 子曰：大哉，尧之为君也！巍巍乎！为天为大，为尧则之。荡荡乎！民无能名焉。巍巍乎！其有成功也！缓乎！其有文章。Confucius remarked, Oh, how great as a ruler man was Yao, the emperor! Ah, how toweringly high and surpassingly great! Yao's moral greatness is comparable only to the greatness of God. How vast and infinite! The people had no name for such moral greatness. How surpassingly great he was in the works he accomplished. How glorious he was in the arts he established. Footnote 45. The Abraham of Chinese history. BC 2356–2258. 20. 舜有臣5人而天下治。武王曰：余有乱臣10人。孔子曰：才难，不其然乎？唐虞之际，于斯为盛。有妇人焉，9人而已。3分天下有其2，以服事殷。周之德，其可谓至德也已矣。The great emperor Shun had 5 great public servants and the empire had peace. King Wu said, I had 10 great public servants who assisted me in restoring order in the empire. Confucius, remarking on the above, observed, It was said of old that men of great ability are difficult to find. The saying is very true. The great men who lived during the period between the reigns of Cheng, the title of Emperor Yao, and Yu, the title of Shun, have never been equaled. Among the 10 great public servants mentioned above, there was 1 woman, so that there were really only 9 great men. The house of Qiu then had 2/3 of the empire under them, while still acknowledging the sovereignty of the house of Yin. The moral greatness of the early emperors of the house of Qiu may be considered perfect. Footnote 46. The warrior king or the conqueror, the Solomon of Chinese history. BC 1122–1115. 21. 子曰：与吾见然矣。肥饮食而致孝乎鬼神，恶衣服而致美乎服冕，北宫事而尽力乎沟绪。与吾见然矣。Confucius remarked, I have not been able to find a flaw in the character of the ancient emperor, the great Yu. He was extremely simple in his own food and drink, but lavish in what he offered in sacrifice. His ordinary clothing was coarse and poor, but when he went to worship he appeared in rich and appropriate robes. The palace where he lived was humble and mean, but he spared no expense in useful public works for the good of the people. In all this I cannot find a flaw in the character of the great Yu. Footnote 47. See Note 44, Section 18 of this chapter.